Hey Mark, how's it going?
Hey, Michael. Doing well. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Hello. Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year, Stoyan.
Good morning, folks.
Morning. How's it going? It's going, guys.
Going good.
Good.
I'm getting over some kind of like head cold or something. So
Man, I know what you
I'm on
mean.
50% brain power.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. I hope you feel better.
It's all good. I feel good now. I'm with the crew.
Yeah.
How was your holiday, man?
Oh, it was awesome. Get to spend time
Yeah,
with family and, you know, good time with family.
they get
Yeah, it was a nice needed break. How was yours?
it was good. It was good. Same thing. Some good time with family. Um, and just some time to chill out and think, it was kind of cool to just take some space. And we got a lot of snow up here in Ottawa, so it was kind of nice.
Oh yeah. I was looking at the Windy app, which has like, the wind vectors of where the polar vortex is. You guys get a lot of that stuff, that white stuff.
Oh yeah, we're fully polar vortex over here. Look at that. We'll start in a couple minutes here. We'll just wait for some other folks to pop in here. Milan's here, Richard's here, Stoyan's here, Georgie's here. Good stuff. Got a lot of good folks here. We got Keith here. Jessica's here. Awesome. Okay, guys. So what we'll do is how many TSC members do we have? One, two, three, four, five. I think we got five TSC members here. Do you think I'm just going to be sitting in for Hendrik for running the meeting. So, yeah, how do we feel about just getting stuff started here? I think we got five TSC members.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get started.
Right on. Okay, just give me one second. I'm just going to share my screen here. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right. So, first Hiero TSC meeting of the new year. Very excited. Um, just a quick note ahead of the call, or just at the top of the call here. These meetings are open and available for anyone to join on Zoom. So you can just go to the Hiero.org and get the info to join, and they're open for everyone to be a part of the conversation. So we've got a lot of community members in the call and the TSC members. So it's a great opportunity to help shape the Hiero project. And then quick note, code of conduct, essentially, Linux Foundation, be nice to each other. Um, we want to make sure that everyone follows the code of conduct to make sure that there's no tomfoolery and that everyone can be productive and happy. And if there is any issue, please let us know. But with that, we've got a pretty streamlined agenda here. Quick note off the top, we do have some previous minutes to approve. I think there's about four or some odd pull requests. Um, in the Hiero TSC repository. And our old way of doing meeting minutes was approving in that repo and then having the meeting minutes stored in that repo. And that is linked in the side here in the governance wiki. But this new governance wiki in the governance repo is going to be where we store the TSC minutes going forward. So basically, if TSC members can just add some more approvals to those pull requests in the TSC repo, we can effectively kind of wrap up the 2025 meeting summaries and then make the transition to this wiki, with this meeting being the first entry in there. So that'll be kind of cool. So we'll get that done, and I'll check the PRs after the meeting here. We can kind of, or you can just go ahead and merge them, just TSC members. So good stuff from there. And feel free to jump in if anyone has any thoughts or questions on that. But just moving forward to the next item here, updates/events from communities or members. I wanted to take a minute and just hit pause here and kind of check in with folks and see if there was any updates in regards to some of these communities or different things like that from our members. So feel free to chime in on this next agenda item here, folks, or feel free to share it in the chat.
Hey, Brendan, a quick question.
Yeah.
About that new, I think it's new repo. You said there are pending PRs.
In the
I'm not
TSC repo, yeah. If I go
okay.
to our ledger and I go
Our
to,
ledger.
yeah, and then you go to the TSC repo, the PR should be in there. Um, and that's how we were doing our minutes in the past.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
If
Yeah.
it's, yeah.
I was subscribed to, but not that one. Perfect. So, all right. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
worries. No worries. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, yeah. The new meeting summaries are going to be in this wiki, but we'll close out the
Perfect.
2025 year. That'd be awesome. Okay, appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then yeah, just any other updates or
Yeah,
events. Feel free to chime in.
yeah, Brandon, I was just thinking, this being the first time that we meet this year, maybe if you'd be interested, I could spend maybe 5 minutes just kind of give a view of how I see the year at right now in terms of
Hey,
what I'm thinking about for working on this year. Okay,
great. I think that's awesome. We'll throw it to Richard.
the caveat here is the year never goes the way that you expect. So, when we check in December, who knows what it'll actually be like when we look at over the course of the year. But some of the things that have been sort of, I guess, top of mind for me that I'm interested in driving forward over the course of the year. The first one is just sort of, there's going to be a series of hips and improvements and features and things like that. I think that's always going to be our normal state. So we'll have, like I was talking to Ty yesterday about Paymaster Hip again, and we've got some presentation we're going to do today for some hip, and obviously there's all kinds of new stuff for block nodes and all sorts of things that we'll be doing over the course of the year. So I kind of bucket all those into sort of the continuous improvement, continuous feature development sort of phase, bucket, if you will. The second thing that I'm really passionate about that I want to put a lot of effort into this year is sort of continuous improvement on the performance level. And there's a bunch of things that we've talked about for a while that we're actually ready to execute on. One of those is just putting real focus and emphasis on our latencies. Right now, we have something along the lines of 3 seconds, I think, is our end-to-end latency. Oh, okay. It's more like 5 seconds end-to-end, including mirror node, and it's like 3 seconds from the time that you submit a transaction to when the transaction reaches consensus across the network, somewhere around 3 seconds. And which is well within the SLAs that we've always lived by, but we can do a lot better than that. and we've started to do measurements on latencies throughout the system. I mean, we have metrics that we've built in from, for years and years, from before I got here. There's metrics to keep track of, how long it takes to reach consensus on a transaction. But we've added more to the performance harness where, for example, when you submit a transaction, it now measures it all the way through the point where a block node would receive that block. So we can get, that measurement. And there's a lot of use cases, especially on spheres, where people want to have lower latencies in their sphere. And on the globally distributed network, I think the main limitation that we have is going to be the speed of light, because we have these nodes globally distributed for maximal decentralization purposes. And they obviously, whatever transaction you have has to be gossiped to all these different nodes. And the most efficient gossip algorithms and everything can't overcome, obviously, the basic limitations of the physics. So I think generally for a globally distributed network, the best that you can get is probably somewhere around 300, 400 milliseconds, which would be one order of magnitude faster than what we do today. So the sort of sales pitch that I give to the team is I want to see our latencies improve by an order of magnitude. So if we could go from, 3 seconds down to around, 300, 400 milliseconds, then it's definitely achievable. It's also not trivial. So it's a good lofty goal to try to strive for. And I think that on an internal network, it should be the case that if you brought, like say in a sphere, let's say that you had all of your machines in the same country or something like that, you should be able to see your latencies come down, you know, in what's the right word? Correspondingly. So I think reducing latency is one of those things that's important to me. Um, Another one is that we actually get really much higher than 10K TPS on various tests that we run, but not on all tests. There's some tests that do really well, and when you look at our system, we have a lot of flexibility and power in all the different types of transactions that we can execute. And if you look at like an Ethereum transaction, it's totally up to how much gas is being executed by the guy. So TPS is not like an even metric for all different transaction types or for different configurations of transactions. Every different type of transaction has its own configuration. So what we do today is we run a whole bunch of performance tests and we say, oh, okay, these are safe limits. Here's like the limits that we're seeing, and let's add a huge safety factor in there so that we know that on mainnet, if somebody runs any type of transaction, it's not going to max out our resources, because we don't want that to happen. If that were to happen, then somebody could, basically do denial of service on the network. We don't like, that doesn't sound like a great thing. So we don't want to be able to do that. So we have this huge safety buffer that we have in all of our performance. But the reason that we do that is because we don't have a way to sort of dynamically adjust the throttling on the system based on the actual load that we're under. So, for example, if all that was happening on the network were, say, crypto transfers or consensus submit messages, you know, maybe we could do 30,000 transactions per second. Maybe we could do 50,000 transactions per second. But we don't have, but then if somebody were to take that crypto transfer and instead of doing a basic crypto transfer, they decided that they were going to do some that included custom fees and had, 10 different parties involved in the transfer, now maybe you can only do, 10,000 of those per second. So in the absence of a dynamic throttle, we just have to throttle that worst case scenario. And that means that we don't get the maximal possible utility out of the network. So another one of the things that we want to work on, and I don't personally, I don't know that this could be completed through the year because it's still in research mode, but it's what we call our dynamic throttles. And it would be the ability to have the system dynamically figure out what the health of the network is and adjust throttles correspondingly. And what makes this even more interesting is if you were in a sort of mixed node environment where you have some fast nodes and some slow nodes, like suppose anybody could run a node. In that case, you don't really have any guarantee of what kind of computer people are running. And there's a pretty good economic incentive for people to run the cheapest, barest node that they can get away with, because then they get the maximum return on running their node. So you would imagine that in an anonymous node world where anybody could run any kind of computer they wanted to on the network, you would see a lot of Raspberry Pis right now, for example, because the load on the network is not that high. So a bunch of people would just run the cheapest thing they could. Which, by the way, we've measured the Raspberry Pi at around 1,000 TPS, if anybody's interested. So it's like, you really could. You could just run a little Raspberry Pi on the network. And meanwhile, the honest people, if you will, are out there running these big, massive servers, and then some people are running little Pis. What we want with a dynamic throttle system, we want to make it so that the whole network sort of auto levels based on its actual capabilities. Whether that's yeah, by the way, Milan, if you want to run the Raspberry Pi at that speed, the only thing you need is a really good disk attached to it. So if you get a good SSD and attach it to the Pi, it'll run happily. You can use Solo to run a single node network on there, benchmark it. But yeah, so it really comes down to the desire to be able to create a system that would be able to stay happy and healthy, and it would auto level itself from a performance perspective based on the capability of the network itself and the type of transactions that are being executed. And we wouldn't have to have sort of a fixed throttle system. And I know that like in on Twitter, this has been something people have talked about forever. They never talked about dynamic throttles, of course, but they'd always talk about, oh, well, we just have the network, artificially limited. It could actually go much faster. And so our thought was, if we could implement these dynamic throttles, then it actually accomplishes two goals. The first goal is uncapping the network so that it runs at its maximal capability. And the second one is it also protects the network in the case of like really atrocious, excuse me, types of transactions that would or hardware mixtures that would otherwise be bad for the network. So anyway, on the performance angle, those are my main things, is like latency and the throttle system. And then there's a lot of it's just sort of technical debt work that I want to work on throughout the year. One of the things is we put a lot of effort a couple, year and a half ago in delivering modularity. And we sort of need to take another pass. There's it's a very well-known, very hard thing to do, is to essentially rewrite your system without blowing up your system. It's a well-documented phenomenon. Most people who attempt it fail, because what happens is that when we go to do a rewrite, a lot of that crufty code that you threw away was actually necessary because there are all these edge cases and scenarios that weren't properly documented that nobody knew about, and you just threw that away during the rewrite, or you run into problems where you try to gold plate the second version. It's called the second system effect. Try to gold plate the second implementation, and it just takes forever to complete, and so forth. So what the team did when we did modularity was, it was actually an incredibly hard thing to pull off, and they did it flawlessly. I mean, we rewrote that system on the fly, and nobody was the wiser. We were able to deliver that in production without a whole bunch of new bugs and so forth. It was really an incredible job. But there was a moment in time when we during that process where initially we're doing the modularity and it's a very clean design, and we're like, oh yeah, we've got this figured out. And then you get towards the latter part of such implementations, and you'd start to discover all the wrinkles and details that you didn't know about when you started. And we were at that point in the process where it's like, you know what, just commit some crimes, write some code, get it out of here, and we'll come back and clean it up later. Because if we stop and try to redo everything at this point, we'll have to add another year to this effort, and we just can't afford it. So we were able to deliver modularity, but I would say it's probably like 70% of what I would want. There's still like 30% of cruft hanging around that we need to figure out. And a lot of that comes into the sort of the basic systems and services support that are in there for things like, computing fees or whatever. So we have a HIP going on for cleaning up our fee system, and we never touched the throttle system, in part because we were waiting to see if we could figure out dynamic throttles, and then we could touch that. But there's a lot of other things too. Like if you wanted to do sort of a custom build of a Hiero network, like let's say you wanted to do a sphere, and you wanted to add some new service that didn't exist before, there's like, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 places that you have to go touch. And it's not really clean in that you have to like fork the code and then you have to go touch those things. And then as we update the code upstream, you have to like update your fork and rebuild and adjust changes. And it's really just kind of a laborious, nasty process. So what we really want to do is make it so that we can have a really nice model for service developers. So if you wanted to have a Hiero network and then add your own custom service to the system, you should be able to do it without having to fork the system. You should be able to just take our existing modules, drop in your own module, and have it run. And that is not something that we can do today. And so that's something that I'm looking at also for next year, I think would be, or for this year, I should say, just so sort of more clean up on the services level that would make it easier to do this sort of a thing. So anyway, those are just a couple of the high level things that I'm looking for over the course of the year. Of course, there's going to be all kinds of features that come throughout that are sort of continuous improvement and user demand issues that we'll continue to work on. There's some other things outside the consensus node. Obviously, there's block node features and things like that we'll be working on, but also like on SDKs. Hendrik is sort of taking a holistic look at the SDKs. One of the things that's always bothered me about our SDKs is that they're essentially just a thin wrapper over Happy. But if you're actually writing an application, especially an application that uses smart contracts, you've got like a bunch of you have to write a smart contract logic. You need to be able to test that, compile it, deploy it. You also have your normal Hiero logic. You've got the SDK that you're going to use in order to, I don't know, create accounts or manage accounts or create tokens or whatever. And then you've got to interact with a mirror node, maybe a JSON RPC relay, and also a block node. And we don't really have SDKs for those things. So you're going to be using you're going to use some API for doing REST. You're going to be using some API for doing raw gRPC. You're going to be using some Hiero API for talking to the consensus node. Then you're going to be using some other libraries in order to do smart contract code. And it's like all these different tools and SDKs and libraries, and all with their own clients that you have to configure with secrets and stuff, all just sort of not in a single coherent approach. It's just a bunch of pieces. And that really bothers me. I think that creates a really bad developer experience. So I would like to see some thought gone into how we could create SDKs that are higher level in concept, where you could do something. Just as a simple example, you can just say, well, I'm going to create an account and then I want to listen to any changes to that account. You should have a simple way to create an account object and making sure that it's in the network, and then you can just listen to that account object and get callbacks in your language of choice without having to manage the connection with the mirror node or block node or whatever else. All that would be handled by the SDK. So there's a lot of like developer experience stuff. And I know that the folks on the DA team at Hashgraph who are out doing hackathons and things like that, they've been working really hard to get feedback from people in terms of what needs to be improved from a developer experience perspective, and then feeding that back into the roadmaps on the team. So there'll be a whole bunch of activity around that this year as well. I just feel like we've done that for a long time. And you have two ways of pushing a platform into the world. One way is top down. Basically, you go to all the C-suite executives in the world and you convince them to use your platform, and then they tell their engineers, hey, you need to use this platform, and then they just do it. The other way that you do it is bottom up, where you just build something that's so amazing that developers just can't get over themselves. They just want to use it. And then they go into into theirs and they say, hey, we want to use this technology because it's awesome. And so you get this bottom up. Um, ultimately, both approaches are valuable, but I am a very big believer that, if you were going to do 80-20, I'd say 80% bottom up and 20% top down. You really want to make something that's so amazing that everybody just wants to use it because it's the best thing there is. So I think there's a lot to be done around developer experience in order to get to that point. It's one thing to build a platform that has great technical capabilities, but if it's not a pleasure to use, then it's still going to have a hard time getting adoption. So anyway, thanks, Brandon, for the detour. Just thought it might be good to kind of hear at least my thoughts on what directions we're going to be heading this year from the Hashgraph perspective.
No, that's awesome. Appreciate it, Richard. Yeah, it all ladders up into that kind of developer experience and how a network performs. So I think that's awesome. I'm curious to know if anyone has questions or anything for Richard, or Richard, if you have any kind of last thoughts to share, whatever. Just want to kind of open it up on this.
I think I went outside my 5 minutes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, if anyone has any questions for Richard, please feel free to throw it in the chat. Absolutely. Okay, so we've got our hips board. We're just taking a look at this. I know we have a presentation for some new stuff after this, but just taking a look at the hips board. We've got stuff from Ty um, and different things. So I wanted to see, we've got last call for 1313. We've got in review for 1208. And a couple other in drafts, but I just wanted to see if we had any folks on the call that wanted to speak to these two hips, and if there was any updates we wanted to provide from a hip perspective.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Thank you,
Um,
Joseph.
I'd like to speak to 1313, which we're
Yeah, go ahead.
hoping to get into implementation in the near future. It does need TSC approval still, I think. Need to double check that.
Yes. I think, yeah, we still need TSC approval. We have TechCom approval.
Okay. I think that was Ty being very, very quiet. So this hip opens a separate throttle lane in effect for high volume entity creation. So if you, for instance, had an application that needed to create a very large number of accounts in a short time, you would have the option, and it is a very clear and express option to request use of the high volume throttle lane and pay higher fees in return for a higher rate of entity creation. The rate of fees increases the more rapidly entities are being created, the more expensive it gets. Initially, we're focusing on directly happy transactions. There is a follow-up hip that'll come soonish to extend that to EVM smart contracts. Questions?
Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, so I guess this is only limited to putting new entities in the network, right? I guess my initial gut reaction is I get a little bit worried if there's a priority way, because in the past we've seen EVM-based networks where people use that as a focal point of abuse to go first and take advantage of those situations.
Yeah, I want to be very clear. This is not a priority lane. This is a capacity lane. So your ordering is the same as everyone else. We don't change ordering based on high volume. We simply allow you to use a higher throttle limit. So fair ordering is critical, is core to the hash graph algorithm, and we're not changing that at all, and we have no intention of ever changing that. All we're doing is saying we have a limit to the number of entities we can create in a given time period, say 1 second. And if you wish to use more of that, you can do so, but you're going to pay more. Also, the high volume throttles do not impact the regular throttles. So if you choose to use the high volume lane, that does not impact everyone else who's using the regular lane.
I can like I can add a little bit of context and practice. It's sort of like if you're trying to create 10,000 accounts, because that's sort of how the internet works in spikes of everyone's aware of some new product and they all want to get it. For the safety of the network, we have the busy signal today, and that busy signal stops that spike of interest. And so if you require with your application a higher amount of entity creation that the throttle doesn't provide because you're just getting busy signals, this is a method of having that massive onboarding event. But as Joseph said, it doesn't affect any of the regular onboarding entity creation or busy signal. It's its own separate lane, and it allows that to now exist on the network while still protecting the network with the throttles.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. So essentially, because there's two separate lanes, when you hit a high need for capacity, uh, there's you mitigate any risk of somebody trying to take advantage of this to potentially block other transactions that would go into the queue. Thank you.
Yes, it's a mechanism to allow those spikes to proceed without shutting down everyone else.
That's awesome. Thanks for the update on this, Joseph. Yeah, does anyone else have any other questions? All righty. Okay, yeah, if anyone has other questions on that, feel free to leave them in the chat. But thanks again, Joseph. That was great. Okay, so we have a presentation of a project proposal here for a new roadmap repository. I'll see if we have Stephen in the call. There we
Yeah.
go. I see you there, Stephen. Yeah, feel free to chime in and run us through and let me know if you want to share your screen, but I have it up here. But yeah, feel free.
You can go ahead and share. I'll just talk through it.
Sounds good.
So basically, we wanted to create a roadmap repository in the Hiero Ledger. Short term, it's just a POC. We don't know for sure it'll be the direction that we take. We want to present it to leadership and first create it and then put a few example tickets on it and have everything linked up with the project board and show it to leadership. And if they like it, then we'll go ahead and make it public and add all the extra tasks that we want to do on it and flesh out the project board for the entire year. But for at least for the short term, we'd like to verify that GitHub has the features that we need. There's a lot of other options, we could do. We can have an internal roadmaps or have other tools that we can use for roadmaps that might have more features, but we prefer to have something out in the open, in public, and something that's already in the tools that we already use for our individual teams. So first step is to create the repo and then add some example tasks in the project board and make sure everything is suitable for our needs. And if so, then we'll proceed to the next step, which it'll become our long-term roadmap. We'll still have probably the Hedera.com roadmap, which is more high level, but this is more like a tracking roadmap similar to the GitHub roadmap board. So maybe you can just open that first link on there. No, on the inside the proposal itself, there's
Oh, gotcha. Right
yeah, the
here.
blue link.
Apologies.
And well, I guess go to the projects tab.
Hold on. There we go.
Yeah, and open the one project that's there.
There we go.
So it becomes somewhat similar to this. That'll be high-level initiatives that are tracked on here, broken down by quarter. It's not a promise, and we'll for sure get it in these quarters or anything, but we'll create all the initiatives, and then each initiative will have sub-tickets linked to them using GitHub's sub-issue feature. And those would be the epics from all the individual teams that are working on it. So for like Blockstream, we'll have an initiative for Blockstream, and then there'll be a Blockstream epic inside the mirror node repo, a Blockstream epic inside the block node repo, and in the consensus node repo, and so on. And those will be 3 subtickets or more on that initiative. And then we can track it all across the teams to say how the progress is going on this initiative, and drill down into the team's individual epics that are already being tracked. So that element's not new. It's just we don't have that higher level thing to tie it all together and see what quarter it's going to become available in. So this is the GitHub's public roadmap, which they are not actually open source. So this is just a way for them to show their internal tracker, right? But we will try to make everything open source and public, so you can drill into the actual work and see everything that's going on. So this is the intent. It's really nice to see it at a high level like this, and more technical than the Hedera.com roadmap. But first we need that repo created so we can do the POC. Any questions on any of this, or?
And it's going to start life as a private repo, you said, or we'll just create it as a public repo, but it might not have long-term.
I was sorry. Yeah,
No,
I was hoping. I don't know how it works with Hiero. I was hoping it could be private, and as you see there, the only people having access to it would be myself, Anurag, and you, Richard. And then later we would open it up. Once it becomes approved, then we can open it up to more people. All the kind of admins or team leads of the individual applications should have rights to create tickets on this thing. But the admins of this repo would probably just be Richard and Anurag long term. But for short term, it'd be these 3, and then everyone later have access to add and remove tickets, maintainer access, and then every individual contributor on this. I don't know if we want to have them have access to it, but hopefully we can make it as private and make it and then open it up to the public. So we're not promising anything about this roadmap repo in case it doesn't work out. But if we have to make it public at the beginning, then that's fine too. It'll just be everyone can see our work in progress, and it may not actually pan out. So
Keith, go ahead.
Yeah, Stephen, this is great. My comment is, normally when we do project proposals, those are about creating new repos. In this case, I think, as far as I remember, you can go create a private project on Hiero today. No, you don't need
no,
anyone.
You can't.
Anyone can. You can't.
No.
Oh,
That's the first thing I tried.
I
didn't want to have to go through this whole process just to create a POC repo, but.
Oh, okay. I'm able to create projects, but also the other thing I think is that we need.
You can't create a repo. I think you can attach a project to an existing repo, but then you're contaminating that repo with tickets related to a project for a POC, right? So.
Okay. But I think the other thing, would you also need GitHub Actions because you're trying to sync across multiple repos? Would that be the other thing that you would need?
Well, when you create a repo, by default, you get actions. So the proposal is to create the repo and the project board, but it's confusing because this is called a project proposal, right? But I'm actually wanting a repo, a GitHub repository created, right? Which comes with actions, and you can create project boards on top of that. So we shouldn't need much thinking. But it should just be something that we manually maintain, and then the epics themselves would automatically be maintained in the other repos and be up to date because the teams maintain them, right? But we could, if we have a need for some complex workflows to keep things in sync or whatever, we'll have that available and be able to implement it.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Keith. Yeah, anyone else have any other questions for Stephen? And thanks for the presentation, Stephen. It was great.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Well, I think that my thoughts are, I mean, I love the idea of having more visibility and just getting folks on the same page. So I think this is a neat idea, and I think that we'll continue talking about this. And yeah, we'll see if anyone has any other thoughts on this, please feel free to share it um, in the chat as well. And then, yeah, Stephen, was there any other things you wanted to any other thoughts you wanted to share, or any call to action, or anything for the group?
Well, what's the next steps here? I mean, is it getting approved here, or there's still some other steps we have to do? And then once it is approved, how long until we can create the repo, and then I can start doing the POC on top?
Gotcha. On the last topic, Michael, you recommended doing an asynchronous vote. Maybe I'll throw it to some other members of the TSC here and see what thoughts are in regards to next steps.
Yeah, I mean,
My feel. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I guess I wonder if it's starting out as a private repository. I don't know if there's a huge benefit for it to be inside Hiero initially. Because you can always create a private repository anywhere, and then when it's ready, you can make it public and do the migration at that point. Um, I just I don't know what the huge value add would be of doing it that way, but it'd also be an interesting process to see how it would work. And then as a TSC, kind of come up with it for future use cases. So I could see it working both ways.
Yeah, Richard, you wanted to mention something as well.
I was just going to say that this one seems like a pretty low risk thing in that we can delete it later. It's not public. It's just something for a POC. So at least for my vote, I'd say fine. I mean, I'm open to any option that works. If this is the lowest, effort method to do the POC, then I'm good with it. And if nobody's opposed to it, maybe we can just get some votes on it and get it created. It's not a, I guess, I don't even know technically if we need a vote, but maybe it would be good just to exercise our vote muscle because it's a private repo. And we would need to have another discussion before we made it public, I think, and committed to it. But I think the idea of having a roadmap that we have public inside of the GitHub is a great idea. And, if it works out well.
Yeah, one other data point is you can create a private repo in some other org. It's just it's a lot more challenging to link across orgs. GitHub doesn't have the greatest support for that. You can't search for different tickets and link them. You have to go to the other org and manually look it up and provide the direct URL to it to add it to the board. So it'd be a lot nicer if it was all in one org at least. And all of our individual projects are in Hiero, with the exception of maybe some infrastructure stuff that's in Hashgraph, but most of it's in Hiero, so it'd make a lot of sense to have it in Hiero as well, so make the linking easier.
Gotcha. So the main reason to have it in the Hiero repo is so GitHub can effectively like, connect everything properly. Because yeah, going cross org might have limitations.
Right.
Gotcha. Um, I think that I have no strong opposition to this either. I share the same sentiment as Richard, where it's something easy to walk back if needed. But I mean, maybe I'll just throw it to the rest of the TSC members here. Is there any kind of like strong objection to doing a vote now, or is it something where we just want to, as usual, kind of maybe just give it a week to percolate and then come back to this to the next meeting? Let me know what folks think. Because we could do, as Michael said, an asynchronous vote as well on this too. So
Curious what Milan, Michael, what do you guys think?
mhm.
Yeah, I think an asynchronous vote makes sense. I was also wondering if it would make sense to put the roadmap in the TSC GitHub repo that we already have. Or if that feels like there's not
Well,
enough overlap to do it in that GitHub location.
the problem is we need tickets created in a repository. Project board by itself doesn't give you the ability to create tickets. Like you need to create the tickets in a repository somewhere. So I don't think we'd want a bunch of random, pip 1215 tickets created inside the TSC issue tracker, right? Just for dummy tickets.
Oh, I was talking about the TSC GitHub repo, the one that I linked in the chat.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're asking because project board by itself is not sufficient. We need a repository to create the issues.
Right. Yeah, maybe I have a disconnect here and was just wondering why we couldn't use that existing GitHub repo to do that. But anyway, I don't think it's a big deal, and it is something that we can walk back from. And like I said earlier, exploring what it means to have a private repository is also interesting, and how you go through that process of then making it public. So I think a async vote would be fine here.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, Milan, do you have any thoughts? We
Sorry,
lost Milan.
yeah, no,
Oh,
my
no
dog
worries.
grabbed something from the kitchen sink, so I
Uh-oh.
had to intervene. No, I agree with async. Either way, I think we don't have the number right now to vote for that.
Um,
So
no,
we're
I don't. I
five.
don't know if we do.
But yeah, I mean, I'm happy to vote async on this. I agree, and I agree with like, it's low risk, as Richard said. Definitely agree with that. Do think, I and one side I do want to avoid like too much bureaucracy, like
Yep.
processes and so on. On the other hand, I do also believe that we can have to stick to our processes or change those processes. So have this async vote and make that decision.
Gotcha. Okay, so it sounds like the key from a presentation and kind of new project purview for this call at least is we've got kind of two async votes to do, and then we can revert kind of like next week at the meeting and kind of like keep everyone updated. So that's perfect. So Stephen, I think that what the TSC is going to do is we're going to do some async votes, and then we'll work to kind of to get this over the line. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Yeah, thanks for your consideration on this.
Awesome. And thank you for the presentation, and apologies on my end just for the low energy. I'm just I'm getting over a cold still, so appreciate everyone bearing with me here. But thanks again, Stephen. And yeah, if anyone has any other questions, feel free to throw them in the chat there. So that's awesome. And then so we're mostly through the agenda now. We're just at the any other business part. Um, Great. Just and this is also a note from Jessica. Um, uh, it's been triggered in the comments, and it will be up for 3 days and requires 50% pass rate. So the in the next kind of 72 hours, we'll do those async votes. So that's fantastic. Thank you,
Yeah,
Jessica.
it's if you go back to the project proposal in the comments, you can see the Git vote comment below.
Yep.
So feel free to vote, follow the instructions there, and it's going to be up for 3 days.
Perfect. Amazing. Make sure you get those votes in. Okay. So yeah, we're at the any other business portion of the call here. So I just wanted to kind of open things up and see if there was any other items folks wanted to speak about or connect on. Yeah, please feel free to chime in and share any updates. Going once. Okay. All right. Well, I think that brings us kind of to the end of the first Hiero TSC call of the year, which is awesome. Already we've got some voting to do in the hopper. We got some stuff popping off, so it's awesome to see this momentum heading into 2026. And Hendrik will be back for the next call, which will be great. And thanks everyone for bearing with me. And yeah, very exciting start to the year. Lots of good things coming. And the calls keep growing. So yeah, just appreciate everybody. And another note that these calls are open and anyone can join. So yeah, appreciate everyone. We'll take our 8 minutes here and a well-deserved coffee break for everybody, depending on if it's morning where you are. So appreciate you all. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.